Hi guys, welcome back to the HELLCAT. In today's episode, we're going to focus on two big news headlines recently. First up is Jaguar Land Rover. JLR has hit the brakes hard last week after a major cyber attack shut down production across its factories, not just in the UK, but worldwide. Thousands of staff have been told to stay at home, luckily on full pay, which is all right for some, while suppliers employing over 6,000 people are currently stuck in limbo. The hackers claiming responsibility say it's their second strike in 6 months, and Jaguar Land Rover has admitted that disruption could last into October. The only good news really to come from this at the minute is that no customer data appears to have been stolen. The bad news, however, is that Britain's biggest car maker is now learning the hard way that ransomware can stop a factory faster than a flat tyre.
Right, so let's get into the actual detail of what's actually happened here with Jaguar Land Rover back in it was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a brute force attack or some Hollywood-style zero-day exploit. The entry point was much simpler. It was an info-stealer piece of malware. Now, how did that land on their systems? The likelihood is probably through a phishing link or a dodgy download somebody's clicked. And once it was running on an employee's device, the malware quietly went to work, essentially harvesting all of their information. So whether that's passwords saved from browsers, cookies, active session tokens, anything that it really needed to prong an attack. Amongst the stolen credentials were logins for Atlassian, Jira, the tool for Jaguar Land Rover developers, and they use it for managing projects. And here's the major problem with that. These details are in hand, and the attackers didn't have to break anything to get them, so they could just log in like a normal user. In some cases, no multi-factor authentication was in place, and in others, they may have bypassed it with stealing session tokens, which they had. From there, HELLCAT had the keys to their kingdom. They were able to siphon over 350 gigabytes of data that included proprietary design, source code, development logs, sensitive employee data, partner data, so the list was endless. This data was either leaked or sold on the dark web or leveraged for more information. And why did it work so well? Well, there's a few reasons. Too much resilience on passwords being saved in browsers. Again, it's a normal thing, everybody does it. Limited monitoring on usual logins, so nobody's looking at who's logging in from where. And critically, nobody enforced MFA or conditional access on Jira, the main development platform. So in short, it wasn't exotic, it wasn't fancy, it was just a case of stolen credentials from an infected laptop being used to work on. And essentially the attacker walked straight through the door.
Yeah, it's a big case at the minute. And the next big news is the fact that giant supermarket Tesco is suing Broadcom and their reseller Computer Centre for over £100 million. Tesco says that it bought licenses for VMware back in 2021 with promises that they'd support it right through to 2026. Then Broadcom swooped in, pulled the plug, and the promises that came with those licenses and forced everybody onto costly subscriptions. Tesco argues it's being made to pay twice for software that it technically already owns and warns that its IT systems, think till processing, inventory, depend on VMware. The stakes with this is that a mess up for the UK and even Ireland could mean that grocery shelves could go bare. Tesco even is flipping the board to get negotiations back on track, and the courts are watching. Broadcom stands by its new subscription model, as most would, for better long-term value, but a whole lineup of big players, not just Tesco, are jumping into the ring with similar complaints.
Yeah, so here's the technical side of this. Back in 2021, Tesco bought something which is called a perpetual license for VMware. So that means once they've paid for it once, in return, they own the software straight out, with support and upgrades including up to 2026. That software underpins a huge chunk of their IT, from virtual servers, running back office systems, infrastructure that keeps tills and inventory databases live across thousands of stores across the UK and the world. But when Broadcom acquired VMware, they ripped up that perpetual model and shifted everything into a subscription basis. Now that sounds harmless until you realise what it actually means. Tesco's systems were already paid for, suddenly needed to be relicensed under the new subscription model. Or how they lose support and access to new versions. In practice, that's forcing Tesco to pay twice, once for the perpetual license and again for the subscription, and that was a clear red line for them. From a technical risk, If Tesco didn't move, they're running an unsupported version of VMware. So that opens up tons of security vulnerabilities. No patching, no compatibility issues. And again, if they do move, they're committing to an ongoing subscription cost that, it runs in the tens of millions of pounds. Tesco's not the only one here. Other major businesses around the UK and around the world, even governments are caught up in this sort of squeeze. And this is why, Tesco is setting the precedent. If Tesco wins, it could force Broadcom to honour the perpetual license agreements. And if they lose, everybody's going to get sucked into that subscription model, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on now, we're going to talk about the UK Cyber Resilience Bill, which is new legislation being brought in to make UK organisations more resilient to cyber attacks. It's aimed at closing the gap between businesses that take security seriously and those that, just don't. And it's going to set some mandatory requirements for sectors that handle sensitive data or are running critical services as well.
Yeah, so this is a big one because it changes the landscape for UK businesses. And when we go through this, you'll understand why. At its core, the bill is about making the baseline hygiene a legal requirement, but not just best practice. Think along the lines of sort of mandatory incident reporting. If you suffer a breach, you can't keep it under wraps anymore. You've got to report it even more so. Minimum security controls, having the likes of multi-factor authentication installed, embedded, vulnerability management, encryption of sensitive devices and data, regular patching, all of that sort of stuff. And then even going on to supply chain security, making sure your third-party providers are meeting the same standards, because attackers will often come in through the weakened back door through a supplier. The bill is also designed to align with things like the EU's NIS2 directive. So if UK organisations working across Europe aren't dealing with two completely different rule books, and for the SMEs, this could feel like a headache at first, more than likely, more of a compliance, more audits, but actually the upside, it's filling in those gaps. So smaller firms that invest in security won't be undercut by competitors, cutting corners or anything like that. It levels the playing field. From a technical perspective, it pushes businesses towards things like better identity and access management protocols. Regular vulnerability scans and penetration testing is a big one. Also, clear incident response plans. This is a huge thing which businesses need to take into consideration. Now, the bigger picture here is crucial. It's saying cyber resilience isn't just optional anymore. It's a fundamental part of your business and safety. And if organisations do ignore it, they can face fines, a bit like the ICO, on top of the damage they face from a breach itself. So it's a huge, huge thing at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. And I think it's one of the biggest things we've seen when we talk to potential new clients and existing clients, that they just don't take security seriously. A lot of people will go in and have a conversation and they'll be like, yeah, we take it seriously. And you'll ask them, no problem, well, what kind of backup do you have for all of your data? Is it immutable? And usually they'll look at you with a blank face and be like, I don't know what immutable means. Never heard of that word before. Which essentially all it is it means that your backup can't be edited once it's been taken. Because a lot of the way that some hackers can do it now is they can do it on the backup side of it, where they'll get in and change the data that's been taken. Whereas if it's immutable, it's completely locked away, so that when you restore that system, they can't basically do anything with that data. So you start from exactly where you left off, as long as you're running it correctly.
Yeah, and I think, it just horns down to the point of businesses may say they are secure and that they're looking after it.
Yeah.
But actually, when you look at the detail of the disaster recovery plans, what actually happens in the event of an incident like a cybersecurity matter, yeah. So somebody got ransomware, for example. What do they do in that situation? And I almost, I put a lot of money on this, that people wouldn't know necessarily the right avenues to go down to get things in the right sort of play. Now, for me, within the business, it's about understanding your risk, your exposure, what you need to do to make your business in a position where, if it was ransomware, you're in a decent enough position to understand the fact you're able to go back, restore data, restore systems without it being too much of a headache. Yeah. You're not going to be down for weeks, it might be a few hours. But compare that to, being down for a couple of weeks, maybe a month. Yeah. The cost to a business on that is absolutely huge.
Definitely. And I think that goes back to that sort of point as well, is do people actually have a plan for when it inevitably goes wrong? Because you can spend all the money in the world on tools to protect yourself, but effectively it still just takes somebody like me or you or Michael to accidentally click a link and your systems are vulnerable. And I think a lot of businesses should spend time at least once a year to go through what that plan looks like if they are ransomware. What steps are they going to take? Can staff continue to work? Can you even go back to a paper model? Whether that's right or wrong for the environment is a different question. But have you actually got a real plan in place of what happens when your system effectively is locked out? Because people will tell you that you'll be 100% safe. It just isn't. It isn't possible. So people need to make sure they sit down at least once a year as a board and as a business and say, if this happens, we will do X. You know, when the pandemic hit, did people have a plan of what they were going to do? Could they send people home? You know, the chances of something like that happening are so tiny. But if you had a plan for it, your business would have been less impacted during that time as opposed to if you didn't have that plan in place.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, it's the broader scope of thinking, right? It's planning for the inevitable, not if. Because, you know, if you're in the mindset of, if it happens, we might be all right. But actually, it's shifting that mindset to if rather than when it's going to happen, because everybody is a target. You know, everybody is. And I think that it's a very important fact to make sure that people are aware of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today's episode.
Yeah.
Again, you know, we like to cover recent news stories where relevant.
Yeah.
And then cover some bits and bobs at the end. So again, if you've got anything you'd like us to add on to the podcast or the whole cast, please do drop a comment or, you know, just give us a call. We're more than happy to advise on anything as and when that happens.
Definitely.
But yeah, anything else from you, Tom?
No, I think that's it really. I think just we'll try and keep you in the loop. If there's anything you want to know about, let us know. And again, our event, 12th of November, down in Burnley at Turf Moor. If you want to learn a bit more about cybersecurity and AI, make sure you register. There is an Eventbrite link floating around, even, not following around. So you can get signed up, get some breakfast, networking, and learn about everything in cyber and AI, really.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good day. Really good day.
See you next week.
We
Oh yeah.
Gotta,
of course, yeah.
You can't forget that.
Definitely.
All right, okay. So this is our signing off.
Yeah.
For today's podcast.
At HELLCAT, we're here to
make IT
great again.